Good morning, sir. Sir, I will give some access. 1 second.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, good morning, sir. Good morning.
So I can start.
Yes, only 1 minute, sir. I want to introduce and then.
Okay.
So, very good morning, one and all. I, Dr. Harveer Singh Pali, welcome again. It's we are fortunate, Professor B.K. Paningrai, sir, with us, and we will start the session after a few minutes. And first of all, I would like to acknowledge to the acceptance or invitation for the by the Professor Paningrai and Professor B.K. Paningrai, sir, is the professor in Department of Electrical Engineering in the IIT Delhi. Sir joined the IIT from 2005. Sir has a very enriched profile in the area of research in electrical and electronics. The main research area is the power quality and the power systems production, AI application, power quality analysis and distribution systems using advanced DSP techniques and artificial intelligence techniques. Sir have the very good research publications, 350 publications in international journals and 270 conference proceedings publications, along with the 7 book chapters, 9 books. Sir have the more than 15,000 citations. H index is the 60 and I index is 256. So we are the enough fortunate. We will attend his experience and his views in this lecture. So thank you, sir, and now over to you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Pali, for the nice introduction. There is some echo coming on from.
Okay, sir. Okay, I'll see.
Maybe. Yeah. Thank you. Let me apologize all of you because of the little bit delay, and there is some urgent program, so I may stop at around 9:55, and one of my colleague, Dr. Akhil Garg, will take on from 9:55 to the rest. So without any wastage of the time, let me share my slides. And okay, so I hope you are able to see the slide. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's fine, sir.
Yes. So I will discuss about the grid integration of the EV electric vehicles and what is the challenge when we are going to integrate more and more EV into an existing distribution system. And so for that purpose, just we will discuss. The main thing is, I hope you are able to see the second slide where it is written EVSE, because sometimes it is a problem in moving the slides. So you can see here, the EVSE is the electric vehicle supply equipment. So this is basically the infrastructure, or you can think of this is a link between your electric vehicle and the electric supply. Okay. So when you are talking of electric vehicle, EVSE plays an important role, not pertaining to the whole part of the vehicle, because the electric vehicle supply equipment is used to charge the battery. You have a battery in the vehicle. As you run the vehicle, the battery gets depleted. So ultimately the SOC goes down. So in that particular case, you have to charge it, you have to take it to a particular level. Now the question is, depending on the type of the battery which is used in your vehicle, because if you look into from two-wheeler, then three-wheeler, then four-wheeler, then different manufacturer of the three-wheelers, then their battery size are different. So if the battery size are different, then definitely the EVSE, the electric vehicle supply equipment, will also be different. because you can't use the same equipment to charge all the type of battery. So I can give you a simple example. Suppose I have a tap. Looking into the tap's diameter, okay, that means how much water is coming out from the tap. I can fill a glass, I can fill a lota of bigger size, or I can fill a tanker. So it depends on how much time you will take. So ultimately, this is the capacity by which the battery is to be charged, and how fast the battery will be charged depend on how much energy you are providing. So when I'm talking of the energy, now you know that this is VI cos phi, electrical energy. Okay, and in the case of DC, it is VDC into IDC. So ultimately, what is the voltage rating of the battery and how much current you can push into the battery? Similarly, what is the voltage rating of your electric vehicle supply equipment and how much current it is able to provide? So for an example, the level 2 EVAC, mostly if you look into level 2, we have level 1, level 2. Okay, level 1 is the home charger. I will come to that. In the level 2, the EVAC is available in 20 ampere, 30 ampere and 40 ampere capacity. Okay, so every plug-in electric vehicle PEF is having an onboard charger. Okay, so this onboard charger converts the AC to DC and it charges. Okay, but when you have a DC charger, then there is no need of this onboard charger. Directly you can charge it from the EVAC. Okay, so now coming to the level of charging, if you look into the level 1 charger, this is the level 1 charger, this is the 5-pin charger. So mostly the current of this level 1 and all these connectors are standardized. So this connector is a J1772 connector for level 1 as well as level 2 charging. But the only difference between level 1 level 2, the AC charging, is the amount of the current. In the case 1, this is about 12 ampere to 16 ampere. In the case 2, which is mostly a high level and which is most to use in the residential or commercial complexes, okay, and the power output is a bit higher than the level 1 charging, okay, and this level 2 charger, sometimes they are networked or sometimes they are non-network charger. That means there is a communication which is established between the charger to the vehicle or charger to the your charging management system. So I'll look into that. Now if we'll talk of the DC fast charging, so these are the AC charger, level 1 and level 2. In the case of fast charging, now this fast charging, they charge starting from, even in India, we have 20 kilowatt DC fast charger, 25 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, and also 90 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt, etc. So as the power rating is going up and it's a DC charger, so mostly you can charge starting from 30 minutes to 1 hour. And again, please try to understand, this depends on the type of the battery. And the charging which is happened from the DC fast charger, it depends on what type of connector you are using, because the different connectors are having, if you look into the CHAdeMO connector, it is mostly a Japanese standard. It is used in Japanese. And similarly, CCS, it is a European one. Tesla is the USA standard. So similarly, India has come up with Bharat 001 standard. So all these charger, DC fast charger, they charge at a very high voltage of the DC, starting 400, 480 volt DC, 600 volt DC, and the current is 100 ampere plus. So simply you can look into 480 into 100 ampere current, it is 48 kilowatt. So the rating is 48 kilowatt to 60 kilowatt. If we keep the voltage constant, the current will increase. The new generation chargers are up to 150 and 350. Why I discussed all these things? Because the main idea is to give you some insight into the different charger and how the chargers work. So if it is an AC charger, then you have a onboard AC to DC conversion, then the DC will be utilized to charge the battery. If you have a DC charger, then directly you can charge to the battery. Then very important thing is when you connect the EVAC to EV, you can't connect as you like. So there are some connector. So this is the electric vehicle connector, which is mostly widely accepted by SAE J1772 connector. Similarly, either you have a CHAdeMO connector, you have a Tesla supercharger connector. So these connectors are different. How they are different? Just I'll tell you what is the difference between all those connectors. So you can see this is a Bharat EV standard connector, which is as per the IEC 60309 industrial socket. And this connector is mostly you can use in 15 ampere AC in your home. You can see. Okay. So this is used for Indian E-Rickshaw, Mahindra E20, Mahindra E20 Plus, even if you can charge the E32. And if you look into the IC62196, now this is another connector. Remember, this is a 3-pin, and this is, you can see, 7-pin, 2, 3, 5 to 7-pin. This is used by Indian and global EV electric car like Mahindra E20 plus 8, Nissan Leaf, Renault, etc. So the difference, all these connectors are there in the pin and pin configuration. So this is a DC plug connector. You know that in DC, one is plus, another is minus. So this connector is a DC plug. This is a CHAdeMO connector, and these are the CCS connector. Besides that, there is another connector which is as per the China standard GB/T connector. Different vehicles are coming up with different connectors. So you can't charge a vehicle with any of the charger. That is the problem, because the charger is having a particular GON or particular connector which is suited for a particular vehicle, because every vehicle is having, like I have given you. For example, BMW, GM, VW and other car maker, they use SAE combo charging station. This is AC cum DC. This is a combo charging. Okay. Some are having only AC, some are having only DC. So that is the main thing of this connector. Then as per the Bharat standard, DC fast charging in India, basically 10 kilowatt, 15 kilowatt, 30 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, like that. And the voltage can go from 48 volt, 72 volt to it can go up to 750 volt. Fine. So these are the different voltage rating. And again, this is Bharat 001 DC or Bharat 002. Only the difference is 001 DC charger, like the type 1 AC low current. Here it is a low voltage, 48 volt to 72 volt, and the current will be up to 200 ampere. So if you multiply 72 into 200, approximately you are getting up to 15 kilowatt. So maximum 10 kilowatt to 15 kilowatt. More than that, it is a level 2 charger where the voltage is, you can go up to 1000 volt. You can go 480, 600 volt, 1000 volt, and the power output vary from 30 kilowatt to 150 kilowatt. So the basic idea regarding all these AC charger or DC charger which are widely accepted and which are having different connector or different GONs, they operate at different voltage level and at different current level. And ultimately the power capacity are different. Okay. So the most important thing is, because you see, if it is AC, you require 3 pin, or maximum there is another pin for the your earth. Okay. For DC, you require 2 pin, plus or minus. But why? What is all those pins? Why there are more number of pins you can find here? So some pins are for the communication between EVAC, electric vehicle supply equipment, and the plug-in electric vehicle. Okay. So between this communication, so this communication is basically an interactive communication. This is a handshaking between the plug-in electric vehicle and the electric vehicle supply equipment. That means the EVAC will recognize the vehicle, and the vehicle will also recognize the EVAC. There is a handshaking communication between these two. Then the charging occurs. So once the charging occurs, see, it is not a static charging. That means the current which is injected for the charging purpose is constant. Because you know that while you are charging the battery, Dr. Akhil Garg, which will carry on around 9:55, will discuss about the charging of the battery is happening in two different modes, looking into the SOC of the battery, that is CC or CV, constant current, constant voltage. So it is not necessary to charge the battery with the same current injected. So you can have a dynamic process. So this dynamic process, it can control the amount of the current which is flowing for the charging of the battery. Okay, so that means this signaling is a dynamic process. It is an interactive process which requires the communication between both the elements, that is EVAC and EV. Okay, so that's why other communication are related to the SOC, the state of the charge of the battery. Okay, so I'll come into that. Now you can see this is a charger. So if you are looking into this charger, now you can see the communication which is happened between the EVAC and EV is generally the CAN bus communication. Okay, so this S plus and S minus, these 2 points are for the CAN bus communication, that is CAN high or CAN low. Okay, so this is a communication which is happening between EV. So communication signal EVAC and EV. Then CC1 and CC2 are basically the connection check. it will check the connection, whether the connection is proper, and other things. Okay, if there is a loose connection or the connection is broken, then it won't recognize. So the CC1 connection check 1, CC2 is the connection check 2. This is utilized for EV testing of the charging cable connection. Okay, so both the cable testing will be, because you have two cable, okay, plus or minus. Similarly, DC plus and DC minus, A plus and A minus, these are the auxiliary circuit. DC plus, DC minus, the actual circuit. So this is basically the different pin, and including the power signal and communication signal between the EVAC and EV. Now coming to the next, this is another charger. You can see this particular charger which I have shown you here, this one. Okay, so you can see here there are two DC plus and DC minus. Then all other pin, you can look into the pin 2, 3, 4, then 7, 8, 9, 10. So all these configuration are given. 2 is charging sequence signal, EVAC start charging. 10 is charging sequence signal 2, EVAC release the charging, because unless the charging is complete, you cannot take out the plug. It is automatically locked. So these are the different security features also embedded into this cable, into this charging connector. Okay. Similarly, there is a CAN bus communication. So basically, to summarize, all these communication are there having the check of the connection, CAN bus communication, as well as the power line communication. So this is one of the equipment which we have in our lab. Sometimes once it is operational, I can give a demo later on to all of you. So this is basically to look into all the communication which is happening between EVAC and EV. So this is a man in the middle of type of thing. We can look into the communication, you can interfere the communication and see what is happening. So basically this equipment, which is known as a charging discovery system, we have procured from Keysight. So what exactly different experiment we can do, looking into the security purpose, looking into the you can play with the communication signal, what is happening to the charging process. So all these things are basically the charging. If you look into, you can have a lot of EV tests there. Okay, so all these EV tests is between AC grid and EV. So I'm not going into, you can have a EV test, you can have a EVAC test, you can have a man in the middle test. So basically the idea is to develop different charging system, the charging protocol, the charging topology, and all these things to test it. Now, coming to the Indian EV charging standard, already I have told you, in India, we are utilizing the CCS standard, where the charging is more than 50 kilowatt. CHAdeMO is also more than 50 kilowatt. Type 2 AC is 22 kilowatt, more than. And the voltage level you can see, this is DC 200 volt to 750. And CHAdeMO is 200 to 500. And the type 2 AC, basically, this is the line voltage 380 to 415. And the slow charger, so these are the fast charger, high power rating. The slow charger are slow charging, DC as well as AC. If you look into these two DC, one is 48 volt, another is 72 volt, and the Bharat 001 is 10 kilowatt, where it is 230 volt. It's a single phase, and each phase is 3.3. So 3.3 into 3 is 9.9, or it is a 10 kilowatt charger. Even nowadays, there are new standards are coming up. I'm a part of one of the standard. We'll discuss whenever it comes. Okay, so these are the Indian EV charging standards. So whatever vehicles are available in India, they are as per all these standard protocol. Now, if you look into the EVAC, I have already talked about the EVAC. The EVAC typically it includes the charging plug, the power converter, the communication, CAN bus communication, then interfacing unit between the auxiliary equipment. And similarly, the system and communication protocol, either they use CAN or IEC 61851. Actually, IEC 61851 using CAN or PLC, because these are the standard. 61850 is the standard for power line communication, your SCADA and other communication. Similarly, the charging plug are having, these are the standard. Fine. Now look into this electric vehicle charge. You have a grid, it is AC, then there is a EVAC. If this EVAC is a AC charger, then you are feeding AC to the electric vehicle. Then this onboard charger converts the AC to DC and charges the battery. So there must be a communication between these two. Battery, mostly the state of charge of the battery and etc. is indicated by the BMS. So the onboard charger is having the communication. So you can see there is a power flow which is shown by the solid line, and there is a communication flow which is by the dotted line. So this is simple AC charging. If you look into the DC charging, same. From the grid you are taking AC, then EVSC itself, instead of the AC is converted to DC in the onboard charger in the vehicle, the charger itself converts AC to DC, and the high voltage DC is generally fed directly to the battery. So you are bypassing this onboard AC DC charger in this particular case directly, and there is a communication between AVAC and the battery here. So this is basically the electric vehicle charging. Now, as already mentioned, as an electrical engineer, what exactly we are doing? We are looking into, okay, if there are large number of penetration of the electric vehicle, what is the impact on the existing distribution grid? Okay, so if I'll give you an example, suppose your NIT Srinagar, if it is having a residential campus, and let us there are 300 faculty and staff who are staying inside the campus. If everybody is having an electric vehicle, then what will happen? Generally, the daytime everybody will come to the office. So mostly all of us will charge in the evening or in the night. And the slow charging takes 6 to 8 hours for the charging. So if all of us, because all of us are having the same driving pattern, we drive in the daytime and generally at the night time we will charge. So when in the night time all the 300 vehicles are plugged in to the power supply, then you can imagine what is the difficulty. Whether your existing distribution transformer will able to supply the power to all of them. So we must consider what is the impact of this electric vehicle charging on the grid. Then how to minimize this impact? Okay, can we have a coordinated charging? Can you have a smart charging? Okay, so let us see. That is the main idea which I want to discuss with all of you. So now you can see, for your research purpose, you have to obtain the EV as a load. Because what is the difference between EV load and any other load? If I have any other load in my home, for example, your air conditioner, your refrigerator, your lighting load, or whatever. So this load either is a constant power load or constant impedance load, or sometimes a power electronic load or constant current load. So similarly, you have to model the EV load properly. So EV load is nothing but a battery load. The battery means it is charging. It takes the current for the charging. So most importantly, how the battery voltage changes when you charge it. So now you can see either initially when the SOC is low, the battery is charged in a constant current charging mode. That means you inject a constant current from the EVAC to the battery so that the battery will be charged. Now you can see as the battery will be charged, the voltage may go on increasing. Okay, and the current which you are feeding is constant. You can see the current you are feeding is constant. But when it is reached to the rated voltage of the battery, then at that time what you want to charge it at a constant voltage. Okay, so this is the main idea. When you charge the constant voltage, then gradually the current goes on decreasing. And so this model you have to incorporate while you are modeling the EV as a load. Okay, so this is the main idea, how to model the EV load. Once you model the EV load, then we will have to study the challenge in the bulk EV charging station. What is the challenge when we were putting a lot of electric vehicles together? So it may happen that some grid issue may come into the distribution system issue pertaining to the transformer, pertaining to the cable, pertaining to the line. You see, it may happen that if everybody is putting the load at the same point of time, then the peak load may increase. If the peak load will increase, you know that at that time, the voltage variation, the drop in voltage may be more. It may happen that because if you have a type 1 charger, which is simply connected to the single phase, and you don't know who are charging on which phase at the time, a lot of phase unbalancing may happen. So which will create the stress in the distribution transformer. So looking into all those things, can we have a smart charging? Okay, looking into the existing distribution point, looking into the transformer. So how we can avoid the unbalanced loading of the transformer, how I can avoid the peak loading of the transformer, and how the customers which are having the EV, they want to charge it, can take part in the demand side management. Because you know that in the demand side management, what exactly happens, the distribution utility, they give some incentive if you are shifting your load from the peak period to the off peak period, and indirectly you will be penalized if you are taking power in the peak period. That means the tariff at the peak time, at the peak period, will be high, and the tariff at the off peak time will be low. So looking into all those things, so how we can have a coordinated charging of the electric vehicle? Okay, so that is the most important thing, the coordinated charging. So to have this coordinated charging, you must have to know the EV load prediction. So this can be done by using any of the artificial intelligence tool, or you can have the survey, what is the electric load, how this EV growth is there since last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, what are the policy government is taking, how the policy helps in to boost up the EV adaptation in the different states. So you can go in all those study related to the policy matter, related to the forecasting. So this itself is a challenging problem, the EV load prediction. The second one is, once you have the EV load prediction, then you can have a load prediction for a particular day. If you have a load prediction, okay, then looking into the what is the amount of the load which is on a particular distribution transformer, then what you can do, you can have a coordinated charging. Okay, so for that coordinated charging, what you require, you shift the load from the peak period to the off peak period, and you can have a flexible charging schedule. So that is the main agenda of this discussion. So I'll just show. This is just simply a lithium ion battery model. So I'll leave it to Professor Garg, he will discuss, but generally this is the model of the battery. So I'm not going into the battery model, and I'm now showing you a study for the uncoordinated EV charge. So this is suppose a IEEE 15 bus radial distribution system. You can model this distribution system either in your Simulink, or you can model it in ETAP, you can model it PSSC in any of the standard commercial software. Once you model it, now you can see, you know that it is 11 kV grid, they have different transformer, different feeder, different buses, every bus is having a load. Now you put your chargers at different places. So I'll treat as, for example, this is transformer 13, and here load 13. So all the EV connected are segregated into an equivalent load at 11 kV level. Okay, because you are studying the 11 kV side. So this transformer T4, T7, T8, T10 and T13 are placed in the end load, and with the voltage 11 kV to 415 kV. So definitely wherever the transformer you can see, okay, all those transformers, the secondary are 415 volt. So after that 415 volt, you can connect your AC charger, or you can connect your DC charger. Then depending on what is the type of the charger, you can have the electric load specification. Then depending on the arrival of the vehicle and the SOC of the vehicle, you can model the EV as a dynamic load, and you can study the uncoordinated EV charging if all these EV are charged at the same place. So what exactly we have done here? The model is simulated with a typical residential load curve of 48-hour time frame. You can do it for 24-hour time frame, and the EV load are simulated at bus 5, 14 and 15. Okay, so bus 5 is 415 volt. Okay, and similarly bus 14 and 15, this 14 and 15, these are also 415 volt. So three phase voltage is 415 volt. So these are the three buses where we are putting the EV, and the EV penetration is gradually increased. Let it is, the study has been done for 10% penetration, 20% penetration and 30% penetration without coordinated charging. That means all the vehicles are charged at the same time, and the battery size which is used is 14 kilowatt hour, 60 kilowatt hour, 70 kilowatt hour, and the rated power is 3.3 kilowatt, 7.5 kilowatt and 11 kilowatt. So you can have as per your specification, and the charging is time is random. I have taken the random charging 17 hours to 20 hours. Okay, and the initial SOC also you can take random, like the initial SOC is between 0.2 to 0.3. Okay, that means here we are assuming all the vehicles which are coming are having low SOC. You can have a Gaussian distribution of the SOC, and you can see many vehicles are coming are having different SOC. And so this is the electrical study. Once you have done, you can see this is the voltage at bus 5. So you can see the voltage in the different time period. Now, why this fluctuation is there? The fluctuation you can see here because of the charging takes place from this point and the charging finishes here. So if we will penetrate 10%, 20% and 30%, now you can see there is a voltage drop significantly. The voltage may drop as low as up to 0.81 voltage. Why this is a voltage drop? Because you can look into the current in per unit also. The current rises almost up to 2 per unit. It's very large value of the current if there is a 30% EV penetration. Similarly, you can look into the active power and reactive power. This load we have maximum 5 kilowatt or 5 kVA we have taken. So this is a pictorial representation that with the increase in EV penetration, the problem which may is arising because of the uncoordinated charging, there is a large drop in the voltage, large rise in the current from the EVAC or from the grid, and ultimately the power also becoming more. Fine. So similarly, this is the voltage at bus 14 and this is at voltage at bus 15. So you can see these are the different scenario which we have demonstrated. So the main idea is you can see that you have a voltage profile of 48 hours whenever there is no EV load. But once you are putting the EV load and the problem arises because of large EV penetration plus uncoordinated charging. So the observation of uncoordinated charging is the voltage drops below 0.9 per unit with just 10% of EV penetration in load centers of different range ranging from 40 kilowatt to 140 kilowatt. And similarly, the current also increases as high as 2.25 times, and the active power demand also increases to the 3 times. So this is one of the study which we have done. Now, another important study which we want to do, now you see the charger placement. Where you will put the charger? Because the charger are slow charger and fast charger. The slow charger, if we look into, these are AC charger which are used in the commercial, your residential or commercial, the mall, park, etc. So basically, this is used in a residential complex, and you know the pattern of those. So basically, this load is quite a little bit deterministic load, which can be predicted. But the fast charging, generally the fast charging, the people charge their vehicle in the fast charging while they are moving. And if they have half an hour, because this charging is from half an hour to 40-45 minutes. So that's why this is unpredictable. You don't know. So this load is completely unpredictable. The power demand is also unpredictable. And again, this depends on the transport network. Because this fast charger you can find in charging stations, either installed in the petrol pump or installed somewhere else. So you know the location of the charging stations. There is OCPP, Open Charging Point Protocol. This OCPP, you can have the location of this charger, the communication from the charger to the central server. So my question or my point is here, you can, if you put a charger, where to put a charger? So to put a charger, you need to survey the electric vehicle penetration in the particular area. If you are looking into the electric vehicle penetration in the particular area, then that depends on your network, that is the traffic network. And similarly, look into the traffic network, it will give you the amount of the electrical vehicle in that particular area, which maybe some of them are interested to use the fast charging station which is available. Then wherever you will put the charging station, you require large amount of the power, whether your existing distribution system will able to give it or not. So that's why these are effect of fast charging on the grid, on the low voltage and medium voltage distribution network. So depending on the charging characteristics, depending on the power level, you may have difficulty in controlling the high ramp rate or down rate, because suddenly many vehicles are coming to charge. So there is a need of to ramp up the current requirement, ramp up the power requirement. Similarly, it may cause the power quality issue because this is a DC charging. Your DT may be overloaded, the distribution transformer may be overloaded, the distribution feeder may be overloaded. And particularly this becomes a challenge when you want to implement the demand side response and having different value of the tariff. So this is one of the grid issue which you can study, and grid stability which you can study here. So now this is the harmonic injection. You can see during the charging period how the harmonic is injected into the system. So the overloading threats are the premature transfer failure. You can have unanticipated power demand. You can have uncontrolled charging, which are, so there are some mitigation strategy which you can do to avoid the grid instability. Either you can have a coordinated charging, or you can have the filter installation so that power quality issue can be taken care. So all these things are very, very important, particularly looking into the grid side issue. Many researchers are studying different issue at different point of time. One is the charging placement. How can you put optimal charging placement? What is the power quality issue? Then the charger which you are developing, can it have the V2G and G2V capability? That means I can take the power from the grid, and when the tariff is low, and I can feed power to the grid. When the tariff is high, I can sell the power. So that's why you must have a bi-directional charging facility. And similarly, these are some ideas, just data I'm throwing to all of you. We can have some cyber security issue, because we can have an attack to data. The attacker ability to initiate coordinated communication attack on the grid. So you need encryption or the security certificate. You can have a malware. You can, so these are the different when we are trying to have the smart charging, your mobile based, app based charging. So somebody may manipulate this. So that means whatever algorithm you are developing, those algorithms should be smart, but simultaneously this should be secure. So this is a simple study you have done, the impact on the grid stability. If you go on increasing the PHEV load at bus number 3, you can see the rotor angle, because it is basically, you know, the stability study you do. So you can have the pole 0, and you can see how the stability margin reduces with the increase in the EV load. Okay, so all these are very, very critical, and we can have a demonstration of all these. You can have the study of all this. So similarly, there are other impacts. You can increase the system losses as you have uncoordinated charging. You can have on-load tap changer issue. You can have the phase balancing issue. So these are the remedy to reduce the grid impact. One remedy I have already discussed. You can have the coordinated charging. You can have the demand response. Again, you can have the energy storage. You can have the battery, large battery storage. You store the power and store this power in the daytime from the solar. Okay, and how you can optimally and distributed this EV into different grid points. That means the charger at different grid points. Similarly, the optimal dispatching or distribution, all these things can be taken care. So this is the optimal placement. As I have already mentioned you, how many charging stations we will put, what is the how many number of type 2 charger, how many number of DC charger, where to put. So this is a coordinated multi-objective optimization problem you want to solve by looking into the transport network and by looking into the existing network. So when you put this, we ensure that the objective is minimization of the installment cost, maximization of the accessibility of the charger to the vehicles. Similarly, you can have minimization of the grid impact. That means the overloading of the transformer, the unbalancing of the transformer will be minimum. And similarly, you can have the power quality issue, the total PhD will be minimum. So you can take more and more realistic objectives for this optimization problem. And simultaneously, another important thing also you can consider, because once you have EV charging and as the load is not predictable, okay, so similarly, you can look into as the current rises, how your protection system will also take care of, because there is a sudden ramp in the power, sudden ramp in the current. So all those things you have to look into, and you have to find it very carefully, right? So similarly, we are studying the electrification of the public transport system, because nowadays many of the public transport like the bus, we are incorporating more and more electric buses. So that creates a more and more fast charging stations in the depot. So in a depot, if you have 10 or 20 fast charging stations and each charging station is 100 kilowatt. You can imagine the total 20 into 100 is 2000 kilowatt or 2 megawatt power. So you require 2 megawatt power at one charging depot. So that's why you have to go for coordinated charging there. So that is the most important thing which we have to adopt. So this is just a pictorial representation we have taken from the GPS and from the data of the Delhi transport unit, the New Delhi's orange bus route. So it will give you what is the bus route, and accordingly you can plan the depot and you can plan the charging station by means of an optimization algorithm, right? So all these things, this is the bus route, these are the e-rickshaw route. So similarly, because why I am taken these two are completely two different type of electric load. In one case, the number of buses are limited, but the power requirement is very high. The other case, the rickshaws are well distributed in a larger amount of the geographical area. The route is large, the vehicles are large, but the power requirement is low. Can you have more distributed slow chargers? Because a rickshaw use the slow charging. So that is the important point. So here we have taken the charging from the solar. If you look into the main idea here is what we have trying to demonstrate. You can see this is a systematic overview of the PV, photovoltaic, grid, and battery energy storage system charging. So can you have a coordinated charging? Okay, there are electricity supplier and there is a central management system. This CMC, the control mode charging, and CMS is the central monitoring system. So ultimately, what exactly we are trying to achieve? The minimum dependency on the distribution grid. So in that case, we want to utilize the maximum of the power which is available from the renewable, the maximum power which is available in the form of the battery storage system, BSS. So basically, we are making a multi-objective charging framework to have the impact on the grid minimum and to charge all these things. So this is one important aspect, looking into the DSO, looking into the EV charging schedule. So basically this is the coordinated phenomena, and for this there are many papers you can find, and some of our students are doing also. So ultimately this is a coordinated charging of the electric vehicle, simultaneously looking into the power which is required for this charging can come from the availability from the renewable sources, from the storage, and minimum dependency on the grid. So that is the main idea of this particular work which we are demonstrating. So I can show you just as a last one. This is the control management for the small scale charging facility. So here you have to look into the frequency range, you have to look into the voltage, and this is a laboratory setup which we have done for the 3.3 kilowatt EV charging, where we have demonstrated it is from vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle. So these are the test results. You can see a perfect voltage, sinusoidal voltage and sinusoidal current, and the voltage is 250 and the power is 0.5 kilowatt. Just okay. And then we have studied it for the voltage variation, for different fault, for grid to vehicle operation with maximum power point when the solar is providing the maximum power point. So these are the some experimental results which we have obtained for G2V and V2G operation in the lab. So let me show you also. This is the maximum power point. Simultaneously, we will taking maximum power from the grid. So this is the conclusion of the work which I presented almost in 45 minutes, because many work we have done in this particular area, and all the researchers, because somebody is expertise in having power electronics. So you can have the charger design, you can have the coordinated charging, you can design a controller for the coordination design. Somebody may very good in the electrical grid study. So you can model this, study the grid, study the stability, study the power quality issue, go for the optimization for the charger placement. So there are different aspects. Somebody is very good, okay, in communication. So you can read all the communication protocol, you can find the vulnerability in all those protocols. So these are the some challenges which I am throwing to all of you for the future research. I'm sorry, because of some urgency, I have to leave. And Dr. Garg will continue for the rest of the time. Maybe during your whole course of a week, sometimes if I can take the classes for some other time, I'll be very happy. I'll join and take all these classes. So I'm just stopping sharing my slides. Dr. Garg, are you here? Yeah, Dr. Garg is here. So he will continue the rest of the classes. Will it be fine, Dr. Pali?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. You have already provided very insightful information. It is a real time and exactly the participant is benefited. So thank you, sir, and thank you again.
Okay. So Dr. Garg is actually, okay, you may not have some data, let me introduce. Dr. Garg is faculty in Center for Automotive Research and Tribology. So his
Yes, sir.
expertise in the battery. He has already worked in many universities in China, and he has also done his PhD from NTU. So he will expose to all the battery techniques and AI techniques in the battery. So Dr. Garg, you can.
Yes, sir. I will provide all the things. Ashish.
Thank you, Professor Panigri, sir. That was a very wonderful presentation about talk on the EV charging infrastructure and challenges. Now I will take up on the talk on the battery technology.
Okay, sir. Welcome, sir. Professor Akhil.
Yeah. So is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So today I will discuss about multidisciplinary aspects of battery modules for EVs with emphasis on monitoring, safety, and recycling. So we talk about battery modules when we use in electric vehicles such as
Sir, it's not fully screen, sir, but
okay. Yeah. Now it's okay.
it's okay, sir. It's okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about battery modules, we talk about how these modules are used in EV, for such as e-bike, electric car, and e-rickshaw. So different modules have different types of rating. For like e-bike, we go up to 48 volt or 72 volt, and for e-rickshaw, we go up to 72 volt or 108 volt. So depend on different rating. So in this schematic diagram, I'm showing you a battery module where we have cells in series and parallel configuration. So these cells are actually can be lithium-ion cells, which are actually imported usually in India from other countries, and we have worked on at the CART at IIT Delhi. We are actually working on design of this module. So we are not working on making a new cell, but we are working on designing a new module and making a new module to meet the different applications. So to work on design, when I talk about design of module, so we focus on different aspects. For example, at the cell level, we focus on how we can estimate the health of the cell. I mean, suppose we are given with a battery in our mobile. So can we know what is the life cycles left in the battery of our mobile? So that is actually, we call this as SOH, state of health. And how do we assemble these cells together in the module? So what is the criteria, what is the procedure, or what is the methodology to combine the cells? That is also another challenge. Then the third challenge is, when we design the modules, are we securing its safety in terms of mechanical analysis, such as deformation or thermal, and so these all can be taken into account when we are designing the module, battery module. So this my talk will primarily very focus on this design of battery module. So now I will briefly, in this talk, I will discuss four main issues or challenges or the problems while designing the battery module. So, firstly, the design of battery module with uniformity and equalization criteria. So, it means that when we design our module, we should ensure that the module performance is stable for over the period of cycles, and how the cells are assembled in this module. Second is the cooling system design for thermal management of battery pack. So as we know that the biggest enemy for the battery pack is temperature, abnormal temperature. So how do we design a cooling system using air or liquid or PCM, so that the battery pack maintain its normal temperature range? And the third aspect is a generic framework for recycling of battery pack module. So third one actually is more on the recycling. So because in Indian market we are actually expecting that maybe by 2024 or 25 there will be 100,000 or more tons of battery modules in the market, whose life has been over. So how we are going to recycle or reuse those battery modules? So this is also a very big challenge. That is very actually a good topic to work on now, to develop the more scientific automated procedure for this application. And the last one is how we design the battery pack module to ensure this mechanical safety as well as thermal aspect. So I will discuss each one by one. So first is the design of battery module with uniformity and equalization criteria for the batteries. So, so what is the problem that we have to design the module having equalization and uniform criteria? When we buy any cells from the market, for example, we buy cells in the market for our clocks or for use in mobiles or even for EV battery. So these cells may not have equal performance in context of capacity or temperature, because these cells are manufactured or produced in very large numbers in industry. So during that large this rate of manufacturing production in the industry, these cells undergo some defects. Defects may be during the coating or during the assembly of the cathodes or anode. So that's why these some defects can actually lead to some variation of performance among the different cells. So so we cannot when we buy cells from the market, the shopkeeper or even the company, they will directly provide us, okay, these are the 100 cells, but we cannot test 100 cells at that time and say that okay, we just need these 50 cells among the 100, because other 50 are not performing the same. So in the same thing, when we manufacture the module, when we fabricate the module, as I shown in this figure, so same thing happened, is that these modules have, you can see the cells are same company, same specification, same size, everything is same, but their performance, actually there is a little variation of performance among these cells. How do we address this problem? Because if this performance of the cell is different even in this module, this will lead to uneven temperature distribution, and also it can even lead to incomplete charge and discharge of the cells in the pack. So that means some of the cells may be fully charged in this pack, and some of the cells may not be fully charged. So that will lead to uneven temperature distribution, and it will reduce the life cycle or the capacity of the entire pack. So for one example, few example I can give is about this BMW, Leaf, and Tesla. So you can see that the single energy density is around 140 watt hour per kilogram. But when we are actually combining these cells in the module, the overall battery density, module density goes decreasing. So that is also one of the very important problem that the industry is trying to address. So because this problem can be addressed in two formats. One is the design format, like when we pre-design the module. Another is during the real time also. So in my work, we have focused on pre-design approach, which is not in actual operation, but this can be also addressed during the actual operation. We call this active and passive equalization. So that techniques are more into the electrical engineering background aspects, so that can be also used. But in our case, we have addressed using the more into the pre-design part. So to do this part, actually what we have done is that we have developed a very simple holistic procedure on ensuring that the battery packs that we formulate is actually having the cells of similar performance. So we purchase some 5 battery packs from the market, And these 5 battery packs actually is 3 by 4, means 3 cells in series, 4 in parallel. So it's up to 12 volt. So what we did is that, so each battery pack has 12 cells, you can see here. So from each battery pack we name as B, C, D, E, and we disassemble the cells and we recover the cells, like for example 1 to 12, 13 to 24, 25 to 36. So we have 48 cells. So now we tested these cells. Single cell test experiment we performed, and we recorded 4 parameters. 4 parameters: current, voltage, capacity, and temperature. Okay, for all the cells we have recorded. So based on the collection of data of the 48 cells, we have applied unsupervised clustering, unsupervised machine learning approach, which is clustering analysis, that can actually ensure the clusters of the cells of similar performance. It means that it will provide us the cluster, means the cells, based on the analysis of data, which of the cells are in the same group. So those cells we can recombine and form the pack. So that's why we formed pack 2, 3, and 1. So this is actually comprised of both experimental and here is a numerical procedure. So then we compare this performance with the new pack from the market, which is pack 1, and pack 2 and pack 3 are the 2 packs which we reform from this analysis. And then we compare and validate based on the temperature performance. So to do the experimental test, we have the NuWare battery testing machine in our lab, and it is a data logger where we can record data acquisition system. We can record all the multiple parameters and at the same time, and we have the internal resistance also measuring machine. So this is the battery packs that I was mentioning that we have disassembled and used in our lab. So we have 4 battery packs, and each of them comprise of 12 cells, you can see here, and we have to disassemble them very carefully. And this is the BMS of the battery management system of this pack. We have to very slowly disassociate so that we can have 48 cells. So these 48 cells are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, and they are tested on this battery testing system. Once we have tested on the battery testing system, we can then obtain the relevant data of each of the cells. So interesting thing, as I mentioned, that for each of the cell, you can see that the capacity is a bit different. So as you can see, cell number 1, the capacity is around 2.6 Ah. For the cell number 2 is a little bit higher, and the cell number 3 is a little bit lower. Similarly, the temperature is also different. So just clearly justify that the cells, even though the cells are same specification from the same company, same manufacturer, the performance could be entirely different. Now, after we have obtained the relevant data, we can apply the clustering analysis. I think most of us are very familiar with clustering analysis. We can use different methods. One of them is SOM neural networks, that we can actually, based on this capacity, voltage, temperature, resistance of 48 cells, we can actually find the clusters, like first cluster, second cluster, third cluster, fourth cluster. So each cluster will have subclusters like 1 and 2. So second cluster have 3, third have 4, fourth have 5. So among these all groupings, so what does this cell number tell us? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10. So this mentions us that these cells have somewhat similar performance. Okay, and so we have chosen this cluster 4, subcluster 4, because this is amounts to actual 12 number of cells. Because in our pack we need only 12. The constraint is that we should have only 12 cells. So therefore, this is a pack which was showing exactly 12 number of cells. So we have chosen this pack, this cell configuration, to combine them together in a single pack. So to form the cells in our pack, we have the battery pack spot welding machine that we use to combine the cells and develop and reconfigure the BMS, and also in our own pack. So as I mentioned that we have developed this pack in our own laboratory from these cells. And so you can see that the battery pack we have one from the market, and this battery pack that we assemble ourselves based on the experimental as well as the clustering approach. So this work we have published before in 2018 in this ASME journal. And to test this battery pack, we have the Arduino battery pack testing machine system in our laboratory, where we can test do the charge discharge testing, cyclic stability testing, as well as the um, this impedance testing also. So in our case, we use the CCCB protocol for charging and discharging the battery. But in our case, we have kept a current range of more than 5 ampere, which is 6 ampere, a little bit high, because we also want to test the temperature profile of the battery pack, because that is the only way we can access, we can actually judge whether our battery pack is better than the market or not. So we have actually provided, a battery pack, this temperature sensors, thermocouples on the battery at the four corners and at the middle. Okay, so then based on this, we have recorded the temperature and the capacity of the battery packs. Okay, so you can see that there is a somewhat difference in the capacity of the battery pack from the market and from ours. So you can see the blue line and this gray line. So most of the cases, the this gray line is showing somewhat higher capacity than the blue line. In this case also, you can see that the temperature, average temperature of the pack 3 means the one is recording lower temperature. You can see that is recording much lower temperature than the other pack. So in this way, we have compared the performance of the battery packs formed from our own approach and from the market. So we can see that the average value of temperature of pack 3 is much lower, and also the capacity of average value is much higher. So this all we have done this testing in our lab. Based on the experimental as well as the numerical findings. So this is somewhat approach which is more sort of manual approach. Of course, it's a little bit manual approach, but we need to work on now how we can automate this approach. I mean, make this approach more fast so that companies can adopt it well. So according to the validation, the capacity for pack 3 is higher than the other pack 1 and 2, and the maximum temperature is also smaller than the pack 1 and 2. So the main now the challenge is that we have done this on 12 cells pack. So if we have large module up to 72 cells, or let's say 100 cells, is this approach still feasible? So slowly we need to work on scaling up the approach to take into the real more larger battery modules which are used in electric cars. Now I will move on to discuss the second aspect, which is the cooling system design for thermal management of battery pack. So as you can see from this figure that there is a bus catching the fire, and the test, and this is the car. So this happens. I think this happened in China, and this happened in US. So the cars, some cars in China and US who are actually leading this. Commercial electric vehicle industry are actually having some problems on the vehicles catching the fire. So the reasons actually for catching the fire is mostly the electrolyte that is used in these batteries, which is inflammable and causing the fire. It's not the cathode or the anode. So therefore, the temperature is a very important aspect that must be controlled. Not just the fire safety hazard can be minimized, but also the performance of the battery can also be enhanced. So this is a very diagram, a very holistic diagram where you can see that a cell voltage and the temperature curve, and you can see that the lithium-ion safety window is very much narrow. So between 2 to 4 volt, and between, let's say, this 0 around to 70 or 60 degrees Celsius. If you go below this, if you go above this, if you go left and right, you're going to see a lot of numerous problems arising in the battery. cathode breakdown. If you go very low temperature, if you go very high temperature, then lithium ion plating will occur. So this is something that explains that keeping the battery in a very this green window is very difficult. Even when we use our mobiles, we tend to overcharge our mobiles or over discharge our mobiles. We should ensure it's very difficult for us to keep a control on when to charge the mobile on time and when not to overcharge the mobile. So similarly for battery, this is a very big problem, much bigger problem, because battery means in the electric car or electric bike, these are comprised of 100 cells. But in our case of mobile, it is just one single battery. So it's not very much challenging, but in case of electric car. So we have done some very basic, when we started working on this part, we have done very basic fundamental simulations on checking that if we can measure the effect of the cooling fan placement. As you can see in the setup, that this cooling fan is placed on the side of this battery pack, and we supply the air, cooling air through this, and we record the temperature measurements in this battery pack in this data acquisition system. So we try to see how the effect of cooling fan placement we can keep in the side or we can keep on the top, and airflow temperature. So what is the temperature of airflow and what is the velocity of the air? That will help to reduce the temperature over the charge and discharge of the batteries for a particular period of time. So this can be done. This setup is an experimental setup, but this can also be done very easily in ANSYS or in COMSOL software, where we can actually design the battery module and define the heat generation equation in the ANSYS or the COMSOL, and measure the temperature of the battery over the period of time. And we can also design the module. This is a battery module. We can also design the module in such a way that separation between the border and the cell, vertical separation and horizontal separation, can be optimized. So because the spacing between the cells is also very important. So this is one of the challenge, and that challenge can also be addressed by simulation as well as experimental approach. So we call this as battery thermal management system. So as I go into detail about the battery thermal management system, you can see that in our work we have actually worked on air cooling battery thermal management system, as well as the liquid cooling battery thermal management system. And so this is mainly implemented to reduce the mechanical abuse, electrical abuse, thermal abuse, or prevent the thermal runaway. So these are something which is very important, and I believe that this is also a very good topic, hot topic in Indian tropical conditions, where we have temperature in summer going up to more than 40 or 45 degrees Celsius, and in winter it can be even lower. In Srinagar, it is almost very low temperature. Also, therefore, this is very important part. I believe, in fact, in Srinagar or in colder conditions, we also need to have air heating, liquid heating. So there is also some work started going on recently on how we can also ensure heating of the batteries, because in very cold condition, very low temperature is also not good for the battery. So these all problems can be addressed and solved based on the application of surrogate models such as response surface, radial basis function, and regime to solve the battery thermal design in EV. And the approach we follow is somewhat similar in air cooling or liquid cooling. Only the thing is different is a little bit we vary the input design variable, but most of the cases the problem formulation is very similar. The procedure is very similar for air and liquid cooling. So first I will discuss on the problem for the air cooling. So what kind of research problem that we have actually addressed in the air cooling battery thermal management system design. So in the air cooling BTMS, you can see that this battery, this is a battery pack. It has several modules inside. So this schematic diagram is for the one of the module in this entire pack, one of the module. So in this module, you can see that there are 8 cells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 cells. So the problem is how do we design this module in such a way that the total maximum temperature of this module is minimized, the temperature standard deviation among the cells is minimized, and also the volume of the module is minimized. The volume means the weight, so it will depend on the the distance between the cells here, d1, distance between the cells here, distance between the cells and the wall, I mean the border, and the distance between here and the inlet velocity of the air. So the problem is that find the optimum values of d1, d2, d3, d4, and this inlet such that the temperature, maximum temperature is minimized, temperature standard deviation is minimized, and also the volume of the pack is minimized. Okay, so this is a main the problem. So what methodology procedure we are adopting to address this problem? We have to design the battery module in the as according to the market specifications in ANSYS or COMSOL. But then we have to define the material properties, design variable, heat generation equation, and we have to perform the grid independent test, and then we have to select the particular suitable mesh also, and then we have to conduct the very basic fundamental analysis, CFD, to find the maximum temperature difference, temperature standard deviation, and the volume. So then we have to, based on this analysis, we can perform the latent hypercube sampling design to design our models, build the models, and these models can be further optimized using genetic algorithms or any other evolutionary or machine learning algorithms. So so these are the very basic procedure that we design first in ANSYS, and we define the equations, this boundary equation, energy conservation equations, and then we define the outputs like temperature difference, temperature standard deviation, and the volume of the pack. And then DOE we do using lateral hypercube sampling. So this all we can actually do this all part in the ANSYS. So we don't need a very separate software or the platform. Now ANSYS in 2020 or 2019 provide all these features, very comprehensive features that provide all this. So we did applied, found that Reaching is performing the best among this model. So Reaching, so we selected these three equations based on the Reaching method, and then we define these equations or optimization problem like minimization of temperature difference, temperature standard difference, and the volume of the battery. And D1, D2, D3, D4, these are some constraints that we defined in the particular values and the inlet velocity. So you can see that the initial scheme was like this, that you can see that the battery is so much heated. This is initial scheme, means this figure is during the initial cycle, 0 cycle. This is after, let's say, 100 cycles. So you can see the battery is heated very much in this case. Optimized scheme means when we use a particular value of D1, D2, D3, D4 from our optimized results, you can see that at same 100 cycle, the battery is not much heated. So that means that there is a good satisfactory result from the optimization. So compare with the initial scheme, the optimized scheme, and the following metrics. So temperature can be reduced by 51%, temperature standard deviation can be reduced by 70%, and the volume can be reduced by 34%. So similarly, we follow the same methodology or the schematic in liquid cooling. In liquid cooling, we have this batteries that are sandwiched between the liquid cooling plates. So these are, so one among the two batteries, we can see in between there is a cooling plate, a cooling channel. So we have to design this liquid cooling plate for liquid cooling BTMS. So how do we design this liquid cooling plate? In this case, we consider the same very similar part like D2, D3, D4, inlet velocity, and D5. So this is the liquid cooling BTMS design. So the batteries are actually, cells are sandwiched between the liquid cooling plates. So very similar we have to design this battery, including the liquid cooling plates in ANSYS, and we have to do the CFD analysis. And in this case, we have adding additional parameter pressure drop. Okay, pressure drop, and another also parameter we can add is the energy consumption, because during the liquid cooling, active liquid cooling, we need to supply the liquid to the use of the pump, external pump. So then we use DOE, LHS to build the models, optimization, and we select the best design. So very similarly, we do design and define the equations, boundary equations, and also the models. And very similar, we also define this functions that we have to build using the surrogate models. So we have using three model: RSM, response surface, radial basis function, and ridging. And in this case, we again found that the ridging is performing the much better results than the other. So in our case now, we have the four optimization outputs: minimizing the temperature difference, standard deviation, minimizing the pressure drop, and minimizing the battery pack volume. And these are the constraints. So we can solve this equation using any optimization algorithm, and we got this optimization results. And you can see that the design variable value D1 to D5 and V, the optimum values are this much, and these are the objective value based on this optimized value, and this is the initial value. And now we conduct the CFD again using this initial and optimized value. So you can see that in case of the optimized scheme, we are seeing very less ready baby sports, but in case of the initial scheme, when we input using these results, we are seeing the much higher temperature. So we are able to reduce the temperature difference by 5%, temperature standard deviation by 0.8%, pressure drop by 44%. So these were some of the techniques and methods and problems in the battery thermal management system design. Now I will discuss about something related to the recycling of battery module. So this was some challenges that we mentioned. We were working before when I was abroad, that 250 tons of battery must be disposed or recycled. So this is according to conditions in US or China or Japan, but in India this can be up year 2025 or 26. So this much technology to recycle this much amount of battery in a single year does not exist. No, the methods are standardized because the batteries are of different configurations, because battery, every company is making their own batteries, own standard, and their own chemistry of battery, new chemistry. So therefore the methods are not standardized. So how to deal with lithium and battery when they're embedded in more 100 or more in a battery pack? So first of all, I will go with the conception of lithium and battery pack recycling. So what is the conceptual framework? So you can see that in the EV battery pack, we need to first discharge, dismantle, disconnect the wiring, and then this is the battery module having the cells, and then we have to recover the cells from this module. So this all part, step number 1 to 5, is actually more sort of mechanical part, mechanical and electrical, and step number 6 to, let's say, 8 is more sort of chemical part. Okay, so this procedure is actually half mechanical and half chemical. Okay, so mechanical process means step 1 to 6, chemical means step 7 to 10. So so the what we were trying to actually propose is that this step 1 to 6, which is a mechanical part, more or sort of manual. Why don't we make this step 1 to 6 automated? I mean, we can make this process an automated part by using a camera image processing technique, or establishing the disassembly sequence, and also using intelligent disassembly tools such as robots, or automated robots. So our observation was that why not step 1 to 6 be more automated? So we need to think about making this process automated, so that this entire conceptual framework can be more automated, and batteries can be recovered fast, and then also we can decide whether we can reuse. So so what I did in my lab was that we buy the old battery packs from the market. So at that time, I remember 2 years before, we bought around 30 packs from the market. These are the packs which were used in the e-bikes, and their life was already over, finished. So I asked my students, why don't you dismantle and recover the cells from this pack? Let us do some play with these packs. So I asked my students to recover all the cells from the pack and do their testing. And I asked them to do the testing of all the cells to see how much capacity is remaining in these cells. Because when we are not using the pack, actually that is also not good, because we can actually reuse these packs, right? So then the students, they tested the cells and they found several, around 36 cells total, which can be reused. So I asked them, you can make these small packs. You can see 3x4, 3x4, 3x4. Why don't you make these small packs from this used packs, so that at least we can add some economical value to the recycled this spent battery pack, which are already spent and their life is going away. So why don't we can actually do this part? So then we tested this packs and we found a very considerable good some results in this pack. So that means that although this procedure is very manual, technique, not very engineering based, but one thing we can see that these the packs which are already life been over and which are lying in the market, no one is using, so we can actually add economical value. So same thing can be done in Indian market also, that how we can actually recycle, add and add some economical value. And some of the cells, they don't have any life. So those cells we can recover the materials and send to some other manufacturing industry, because many manufacturing industry, not just the battery manufacturing, other manufacturing industry, they need some raw materials. So we can recover some raw material from the dead cells and send them to the manufacturing, or we can make small packs and reuse them. So this is something which can be done. So at the same time, we also wrote a project when I was working in China on how we can establish a robotics in recycling, because this is also something very useful. Because if we do recycling in a manual way, using tools, hand tools, or the machine design tools, then it is very risky, because some batteries may have spilled electrolyte. So it's not safe, and it's also very slow. So robotics may play a very important part in the future. So therefore, we we coded the robotic arm. Our student, they programmed the robotic arm, and they actually try to dismantle the battery pack by removing the side plates and the BMS, and then grabbing the cells. So this is all part of robotics. So again, mechanical engineering background researchers, they can easily come into the picture to and this industry, to my understanding, in Germany we have one industry working on this aspect, and in China also one industry, but I am not seeing very less industry still in this part. So this is something very hot topic going to be. So to program all this part, to do the dismantling using the robotic arm, we first have to understand what is the physical composition of the battery pack, like cables being used, what are the cells being used, and what is the nickel plate. So these all we have to understand, and then we have to define the robotic assisted disassembly, crushing, skinning, or separation. So this was all the part of the work which was done by my students, and we also compared the results of this assembly using the manual hand time and the robotic time. So these were all we have done in the lab. Uh, the future could be machine to machine or human to machine. So I believe that the battery pack recycling, in our understanding, it will be a human machine collaboration, not only the machine, just the machine. So it should be a human machine collaboration part, where battery packs can be dismantled, discharged, and also the cells can be sorted out and recovered. So now I will discuss on the fourth part, which is the last part, on the design optimization of battery pack enclosure for minimization of the mass and this. So for any EV component design analysis, we have to identify a critical component of EV. We have to do the conceptual design, apply some topology or free surface optimization methods, and redesign the component and then fabricate. So this is for any EV component design, even for any mechanical engineering component design. So this is a battery module, battery pack, sorry, in our case. So we have this 6 modules here and 6 here. So 12 modules are there. So actually this pack design is very complex. It's having more than 106 components, but we are only showing the important very few components here. So we first conducted the static analysis, which is based on defining new materials. Like we use the aluminum alloy, and we have these properties. And static analysis, basically the weight of the battery is acting downward on the center of each of the battery pack. So this is how we actually assume and conducted the static analysis. And also we define 3 objective functions like weight minimization, minimize natural frequency, and maximum deformation. So this weight will depend on the design variables such as thickness. So we have 5 thicknesses in this case. So one is this case thickness, inside thickness, outside thickness, upper and bottom. So there are total 5 thicknesses parameters are there, and we did the static analysis to see and the model we also did the model analysis to measure the frequency response and record the number of modes for each of the analysis. So our objective was to maximize this minimum frequency to avoid the resonance. Okay, so we did this entire work in the ANSYS, and we use a combination of methods such as LHS, neural network, or CCD. So because DOE methods also have a good impact. So we conducted with uncertainties and without uncertainties. As I mentioned, some problems may not be deterministic because we are not sure about the design variables, the variations in the design variable. Therefore, we have to assume sometimes uncertainties. So for this part, I used my own genetic programming software, which I worked with Rolls-Royce during my PhD in 2000 back. So I'm still using sometimes the software which I used for in the company Rolls-Royce. So this software will actually develop a framework, a functional relationships between the outputs. So we found that during our optimization and problem from this model building and optimization, these are the design variables, and when we simulated this value, we can find that this improvement in 3 deformation, frequency, and mass. So we also published this paper in the industrial with our industrial collaboration together, and we manufactured this our fabric. We design when we got these results, we then fabricated this in our lab. You can see this is the battery module being fabricated in our lab, and then we fabricated the entire pack and we used in our EV electric vehicle prototype for with our where we have industry partner also collaborating with us. So this was one of the work, and this is one of the like a schematic diagram about the EV modules being kept in parallel, where we have a battery pack. And next work which we have done was how we can use deep learning for battery pack model in EV. So we are actually trying to monitor the state of health, state of charge estimation using deep learning methods, because deep learning methods this have more advantages as compared to the traditional network, as it can handle large amount of data. So we have worked upon this part also a lot. So topology design optimization, new material development, and additional objectives. So this is something which we can still carry the work further using the mechanical design optimization methods. And now I will discuss about the future aspects, which I'm currently working at IIT Delhi now. So this is something which I'm currently working now. Is on digital twin for battery pack. Digital twin, in a very simple language, a layman language, means something which is a twin of a system, replica of a system, but is providing the information feedback in real time. Okay, so we can also say that model, a very comprehensive model which is giving all the information in real time to the real systems, real physical system. Okay, so this is actually digital twin is useful when the systems are very complex in nature. Otherwise, otherwise these are not useful. So in case of battery pack, we can say that the digital twin is mandatory because battery pack is a very complex multi-physics system that is, have electrochemistry, chemical engineering, electrical aspects, mechanical aspects, design aspects. So all the data is coming from all different aspects. Okay, so therefore we need to analyze all this data and provide the feedback. Okay, so to build the digital twin, we need several technologies to work together in real time, such as machine learning, IoT, and cloud computing. So so why we are trying to use for cloud computing? Because the models can be computed very efficiently. IoT will ensure the communication between the sensor devices and the systems, and machine learning will train the digital twin, whether or other for queries or different data or updating the model. So in case of digital twin for the battery, let me again emphasize that for battery industry there are three different phases. One is the research and design phase, where we are actually designing the battery. Here we are doing the initial testing of the cells, battery packs, and we are collecting all the data. Another is a manufacturing phase. Okay, manufacturing phase. So where we are actually manufacturing the battery based on the design data obtained from the design, and then in the after sales phase. So this was something which was done in the past. So this digital twin was done in the past, and all this data will be stored in the cloud. Okay, now after sales phase will be able to access data from the design and manufacturing phase, and then can actually modify their own models. So uh, what we proposed was we actually introduced also the operation phase here. So research design 4 phases: manufacture, operation, and post operation. Now my student, she is working on obtaining data, building the cloud, and obtaining data from different phase of the battery, because design phase, manufacture phase, operation phase, and post operation. Post operation means either you are charging or you are recycling the battery. So, so this all data coming from different phase will be stored in the cloud, and here the big data methods will be applied, and the information will be sent back to the again the different phase. So, for this whole system, digital twin, we need to have use of sensors, IoT, machine learning, everything we must use. And because why this is important in battery, because the battery manufacturer is different from battery operational, because manufacturer is, let's say, Tata, but the people who are operating the battery are customers like us. So we don't know what is actually happening inside the battery, and manufacturer doesn't know what we are doing with the battery, how we are charging or discharging the battery. Therefore, interrelationship between the different phase of the battery is very, very important. So this is digital twin for the battery. But what I suggest that in your own area, you may be working on other, let's say manufacturing processes, or you may be working on electrical system. That can also be, digital twin can be created for those systems also, not just for battery. So in case of the battery systems, not just the battery, this is for the battery pack, right? Even we can club this with other regenerative sources like charging station, grid, or this. So this can be an even bigger digital twin system. So conclusion is that the lack of digital models, physics-based model, is not good enough. Okay, so digital twin is some technologies which are emerging for prediction, optimization, and control of expensive system. We should maximize the use of topology optimization for designing new electrode for the batteries, and also we should try to use non-destructive testing methods or more intelligent assembly disassembly systems for recycling of batteries. So these are some conclusions which I like to come out from this talk, which are actually emerging trends in abroad also on the battery pack devices. Yeah, so I like to thank everyone, and I hope this was fruitful. And these were some contributions that we have made in the battery pack design. And also we have provided how much accuracy and how much we were able to achieve. And to for the battery pack, design, it is actually a very interdisciplinary and very much multidisciplinary work. We need people, and we need the support from material background. We need support from the chemical engineering, electrical engineering. So this is, and also mechanical engineering. So this is a very, very interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary work. So I also have a PhD positions at CART, and I'm sorry that I'm showing here. If anyone students who are willing to work and apply PhD, and they can definitely apply and write to with their CV at this rate. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable session. The participants are open for the questionnaires, if any. So there is a question in the chat box.
Okay.
So that are we using direct contact liquid or indirect contact liquid in liquid cooling?
Indirect, actually, we are using indirect liquid contact. So it's more like a heat exchanger. So it's we are actually circulating in the liquid plate, and we are actually using indirect. Yeah, and
There is one more question, sir. How does the temperature reduced when the volume of battery pack is reduced?
so when the actually this is volume when the volume of battery pack is reduced, we are actually focusing on the cost aspect. At that time, we are not actually seeing the temperature aspect, but when during our optimization problem, we are actually taking the volume and the temperature as an objective simultaneously. Of course, when we reducing the volume, there is the cells are actually spacing is very less, and there is a high chance that the cells may get heated also. So that is a trade balance which have to be optimized between the cost as well as the temperature. So because also the cost of manufacturing is very high of battery module, therefore this is a kind of a trade we have to achieve. Yeah.
So one more question from Mr. Sagar Rajendra Wankhede, whether PCM is better for BTMS, and he has a question in continuation that is nanofluid is better for BTMS.
Yes, nanofluids have been tested. We have also tested some nanofluids for BTMS. We cannot say which one is better, PCM better or air or liquid cooling. For very high discharge, actually, very high discharge battery, we are using liquid cooling. For low discharge battery rates, we are using air cooling. Liquid cooling is a very expensive, considered expensive system and more complex. Air cooling is considered very cheaper and very simple system. So in India, if you ask me, in India, people are going for more for PCM based because phase change materials, the design is a bit complex, but actually the results are much better than air and liquid. So it depends totally on company to company, industry to industry. Tesla is going for liquid actually. Tesla is going for liquid cooling. So it totally depends, and the results from all this PCM, air or liquid, will also depend on the type of module being used and type of conditions it has been operated. Yeah. So results are very much have a lot of variations. But for high discharge rate, PCM or liquid cooling is used. Yes, I can share my email ID for we can discuss, explore the collaboration part also. It's no issue. You can you can email me at this part, and we can discuss about any collaborations or anything. I'm very open to have share my experience and work together.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for finding out time from your busy schedule.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So shall I leave?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.